This works. Okay, we'll get started. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about now is Agile and DevOps. I'll hang up on the phone. Okay, so I'm going to talk about here Agile and DevOps. And Agile is just like what the phrase sounds like. It's being agile. So here's an example. I'll cover it down here. Oh, by the way, I've got tremendous feedback going on here. So feedback was just really hard to talk. So, okay, let me do this. Yeah, okay, let me go ahead and get back to the sharing. This is share. Okay, so it's like it resets everything. Okay, so on one side, and you can see down here, I think, right? Okay, so is the audio okay? So I can't hear anything now. Okay, so
your audio and camera's working. But
the Agile DevOps, it's a way of doing business that's a lot different than the way things used to be done, and a lot of it's still done the old way, pretty much around the planet, other than a few countries, really. So the idea is things are going to change. You can't possibly know what's going to happen. So stop getting stressed out over not being able to control the future, and just roll with it. The old way of doing things was called waterfall, because if you think of water coming off of over the edge, it just goes straight down. All the water around it goes in a straight line. It can't change direction. It can't stop. It can't go, wait, this is a bad idea. It can't do any of that stuff. It just goes straight down. And that just doesn't work in the real world. So now I'm going to cover example of Agile doing a vacation. I'll let you just go ahead and read that. So that all makes sense? Okay, now here's what it looks like if you're doing a waterfall approach, right? Lots and lots of planning, careful detail, much work. And then the first night you get there, you find out that really your whole schedule needs to change, or you're going to miss out on this great opportunity. In businesses like that, because one customer goes away, another customer pops up and says, hey, if you could give me just part of what you've got going, we would buy a pile of them, or we'd pay a fortune for them. And it's happened more times than I can think of, in my career. So you can see the difference between the two approaches. The waterfall, you spend a lot of time upfront planning, and then as soon as it hits, you throw it out, and you have to go switch back to sort of an agile approach anyways. Whereas here, you get up, and within the first night, you're at the airport, right? And now, this agile vacation, 3 week, I actually did that. Rolled out of bed and decided, I want to go on vacation. Okay, so now here's what it looks like in work. At work, in Agile, you break your chunks of work in something called a sprint, which is just a fixed period of time. And it's always the same, with the idea that you go ahead and you build up a certain cadence. So and typically people use 2 to 4, often 3 weeks. At the beginning, you and your team all get together and agree that what the team's going to get done, not by individual basis. Then each person says, hey, I'm going to go ahead and start on one thing. I'm going to start working on it. You get stuck. You say, hey guys, I need help here. They stop what they're doing. They come over and help you out. Then once a day, you get together and just really quick, everybody says, this is what I got done yesterday. This is what I'm going to do tomorrow, or today, I should say, and any roadblocks I hit. And then somebody else in the team might say, hey, I already did that, or I'm an expert on that, let me help you out. Or, hey, I have got the same problem, or, hey, let me go I'll go resolve that roadblock for you. So it's a way of keeping the team tightly coordinated. And we're doing this every day at work using phone calls because we're all working from home because of the COVID. Now, one dedicated person, the Scrum Master, is supposed to take care of all those outside problems for you, so that you can just focus on getting what needs to get done. Now, at the end, your team should do a demo to the customer. And so the customer says, okay, yeah, that's what I wanted. But what happens so often is the customer looks at it and goes like, well, first of all, I just realized that that's a much more expensive way of doing things than I wanted, or more than I needed. For example, you might say, hey, we're at 98% of your performance numbers, but it's going to cost us 6 months to get the last 2%. The customer, get it, don't worry about it. We want the product now. Okay? Or they'll say, you've got so much there, we'll take it as is. We're just really happy. And that actually happens at work. So everybody's pretty happy, a lot of team dynamics. It's like being in a rowboat where everybody's rowing. Either you all get there or none of you do. So here's waterfall. So your boss comes in and says, you are going to work on this, you are going to work on that, and I've decided it's going to take you until Wednesday and you until Friday. And you're like, that's like a 2-month project, or it's going to take a month to order the parts. I can't even, this is crazy. And the boss says, why are you causing trouble? Obviously, you're not a team player. I told you what you need to get done. You need to go do it. And everybody else is overloaded. They can't come and help you if you're stuck. And everybody's getting blamed for being late. And if they're late, they're probably going to blame you, if at all possible. This is not a very fun place to work. And as a result, your productivity tanks. So between waterfall and agile, you might see 10 to 100x higher productivity between the two, which is pretty huge, right? I mean, if you want to start a company, something could take you a year or 100 years. Which would you prefer? Okay, so I'm going to switch to DevOps because with all the technical problems, I wanted to get to it and then give people time to ask questions. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if I got a good way of hearing people come back at me. So DevOps is short for development plus operations. And the idea is that you can't just write software in a vacuum. You've actually got to get it out to the customer. It's useless, right? And so you need to think about that whole process, developing it and getting it out to the operations, which means out to the field or in the customer's hand. So it's really just common sense. If you're going to do something once, you're going to do it more than once, automate it. Nobody does manual steps 100 times and gets them perfect. Fix the problems or verify that there's no problems before you bolt stuff together, right? classic, like building rockets, building cars, anything. It's just that in software, people don't really, you can kind of get away with that, with not doing it. And the other one is, as soon as you start bolting things together, you discover the big oops. So I actually help a AI AA team, and they talk about how they've learned. The first thing they do when they're going to build a rocket is they buy some cardboard tubes, and the big one is the outside shell of the rocket. The inside one is the main body. And then what they do is they actually cut holes in the cardboard on the big one to show where they're going to have their access ports. And then they use yellow stickies or paint to mark where the valves or whatever are. And so often they wind up not having the two aligned. So the only way to turn the valve is you have to be a squid or something, because you just can't get a physical arm around these weird corners. So they've learned that's part of DevOps. You discover these problems early on. Now, another part of DevOps is you don't wait to give the customer a release for, say, 2 weeks, or I should say 2 years. What you want to do is bolt stuff together and give the customer lots of little releases every 2 weeks, so you get quick feedback, and you know whether or not this is going to blow up in the customer, or they just say, this just isn't going in the direction we want. We're seeing some unexpected behaviors or something like that. Then lastly is the pair programming. It works. And also in this time of COVID, people really love it because they're actually having a chance to sit with one person for, say, a couple, 3 weeks, and they get to know them, right? They're together on Skype for 6 to 8 hours a day versus just sitting at home, typing by yourself. You don't talk to anybody except maybe your coffee mug or cat. And it's pretty socially isolating. So here's more on the DevOps. You give the customer the regular basis. You have to try them out. It all makes sense, right? And now today with IoT and security and hacking and everything, you also, part of DevOps has been expanded to say DevSecOps, and Sec for security, because to put security in, you need to operate the full system level. You can't tack that on at the end. You've got to design it that way. So that's at the 15-minute mark, and I got about 10, 15 minutes left for questions. By the way, I've got a 3-second feedback, and it's just driving me crazy. It's really hard to talk over it, so my apologies. I can hear some noise. Anybody got questions? I don't hear anything. Sorry, I had a bunch of outside noise coming in. Seriously, no questions? This is like a totally different way of running your life. It's great, but it is different. Okay, well, since I've got a couple minutes, I'll just like to suggest something to think about. Given medical advances, you're going to live to be about 100, maybe 120. So you want to think about that. And I tell everybody who's in college this, you're going to be able to work, say, till you're 80 or 100, but you're probably not going to want to. So what you're going to want to do is keep your expenses a little lower, especially in the beginning, save, put money into your 401k, because then by the time you're 50 or 60, you'll be able to retire and spend 40 years doing what you want. Whereas if you kind of spend that extra money, you're going to have to be 50, 60, and you're going to say, crap, I got to work 40 more years. So just think about that. And when you graduate, spend the first 5 years living as poor as you were in college. Yeah, your friends are going to buy the fancy cars, the big apartments, but the thing is, in 2 or 3 years, you're going to have a bunch of savings, and then you're not going to worry about layoffs or getting sick or whatever. You're going to be safe, and they won't have any of that. They're going to live their life stressed out because they spend every penny they get. Oh, hi, Mitt. Okay. I don't know that Agile will change dramatically. It'll continue to get refined, just because everything does, right? But what's going to happen, and we're seeing this, because of the big difference in productivity, the companies that are really doing Agile right, they're blowing the doors off the little companies. The companies that are not doing Agile. So, and the companies that are doing Agile are all the smaller ones that are succeeding at it, I should say. Big companies have a very hard time switching to this approach because it's a huge culture change, right? It's sort of waterfall is like medieval era sort of thinking, right? Somebody comes in, they tell you, they micromanage you, and you get yelled at personally, and there's no. And with Agile, it's different. It's sort of like in college, you know, when your professor says, "Here's your project. You need to present this at the end of the quarter or semester," and then they walk away. That is more like Agile, but work does not work that way normally. So I think the big question is not so much Agile or those not. Okay, tools most effective. You know, I've been doing Agile since the 90s, before it was called that. The term wasn't invented. It was just sort of what made common sense. And people I knew at startups I was at, we just came up with it. So we didn't have any special tools. If you think about it, okay, so you want a revision control tool that can be anything free. You can even use an Excel spreadsheet. You want some sort of a shared document thing. That's any kind of a Linux folder, Windows shared folder, anything like that. So Agile's a cultural change. If you change your culture, you can invent the tools or you'll find tools. I literally know of a project last year that came in 25% under budget and 25% early, and they literally were using yellow stickies and poster boards taped up down a hallway, and the things were just duct tape. They literally had duct tape. So you don't even need paper. I mean, sorry, computers, just paper will work fine. Right now, the big tools are Atlassian and Azure, and then there's some free stuff. But at the industry corporate level, pretty much it's Atlassian and Azure. And I can't really comment one versus the other. I'm used to using Atlassian, but I've also heard good things about the Azure tool. The hardest part is getting that culture change that I've run into. One is getting people who are used to getting told what to go do, getting them to use the idea that they actually get to pick what they're going to go do and not wait for somebody to tell them what to do. And then the other hard part is getting the managers to go off and do something else. Stop micromanaging. You don't need to. Every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, you're going to see a full demo. You're going to know what's going on. It's going to be fine. So that's just what the tough part is. But it takes 6 weeks just to stop chewing bubble gum. And so if it's that long, it can take months. I've heard of 6 months to a year in some groups to switch over. Hi, Hendrickson. I'm not quite sure what exactly you want me to cover on the implementation. Are you more like tools or the culture change? I would say if you want, try doing Agile on a road trip. Just pick some place you want to go. And oh, I see what you're saying. Hi, Hendrickson. Okay, so what you want to go do is Agile is all about delivering something. So you want to take school projects are good. Doesn't work quite so well for things like homework, because that's sort of on an individual basis, right? That whole approach of homework is very waterfall thinking, individual tracking, being tracked, right? It doesn't measure how good you are in being in a team, how good you are at figuring out the best way to share the work among the team. So I think for that, you really have to get a professor to agree to switch. But you can see the professor has things better because they don't have homework and they don't have to do finals. What they do is they say every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, here's your little team. You need to present this, right? And then demo it. Now, other places, I've actually done it where the different teams grade each other, because that also makes people learn from across all the other teams. Well, I think my time's pretty much up. So yeah, I think it's time to, do you want to do anything for getting ready for the next group or the next presenter? Again, my apologies for the feedback. It's just very hard to stay focused when your own voice is coming back at you 3 seconds. Just really tough.
Hi, Eric. Since we are getting to the end of your workshop,
Yep.
I just want to thank you for your time and for also answering the questions. And so I think we can wrap this up. And I apologize for all the technical difficulties we were having earlier trying to set it up. But yeah, I appreciate you coming out and speaking for us at WeHack.